Christmas and happy holidays, no matter which holiday you celebrate this time of year. Second, if you've been watching me for a little bit, you might have noticed that we have changed notebooks here. Unfortunately, our old trusty notebook ran out of open pages for us, so we had to get a new fresh notebook with heaps of free fresh pages. So that old notebook was good to us, but it was time to move on, so here is our new notebook. And finally, the third thing is I apologize for not posting a Premier League predictions video. I was pretty busy over the weekend with Christmas stuff, Christmas Eve, all that kind of stuff, so I didn't really have time to make that video. So if you were looking for that Premier League video, I apologize for not posting, and I should have one up for next week's matches. Anyway, here we are for our Week 16 recap. And now we will get right into it by opening to our first fresh new page in our new notebook. And I received a couple of comments on my last video about the new format, saying that they liked it, and no comments saying to keep the old one, so I think I'll be sticking to the new format that I introduced in my last video. So on the left we'll have our away team, and on the right we'll have our home team. So starting off with the Thursday game, we had the Jaguars versus the Jets. The Jaguars won this game 19-3. Both teams are now 7-8. Trevor Lawrence led the game with 229 passing yards. Travis Etienne led the game with 83 rushing yards. And Evan Ingram led the game with 113 receiving yards. Zach Wilson played horribly in this game and was benched for Chris Streveler at one point. And now it has been said that Wilson is the third string quarterback behind both Mike White and Joe Flacco. So he will not even be suiting up for game days in the future. Tough stretch for the former number 2 overall pick. The Jaguars, on the other hand, are now leading the AFC South and are in the playoffs as, I believe, the 4 seed. Next up is Bills versus Bears. The Bills won 35-13 on Christmas Eve. The Bills are now 12-3, and the Bears are 3-12. Josh Allen led the game with 172 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Devin Singletary led the game with 106 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Velus Jones Jr. led the game with 52 receiving yards. Bengals versus Patriots is next. The Bengals won 22-18. The Bengals are 11-4 and the Patriots are 7-8. This game was 22-0 for the Bengals at halftime and looked like it might be a blowout. But they didn't score in the second half, and the Patriots actually had the ball, I think inside the Bengals' 10-yard line even, with about a minute left, down by 4. Only 4 because they missed an extra point that would have made it 3. But they had the ball, they should have punched it in to win, but Ramondre Stevenson fumbled, and the Bengals recovered, and the Patriots lost. So, 2 heartbreaking losses for the Patriots 2 weeks in a row to almost kill their playoff chances this year. Joe Burrow had 375 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Joe Mixon had 65 rushing yards. And T. Higgins had 128 receiving yards and a touchdown. Saints vs. Browns is next. The Saints won 17-10. Both teams are now 6-9, but very different meeting 6 and 9s, because the Saints are still within reach of winning their division even at 6 and 9, but the Browns, I believe, are eliminated from playoff contention now with that loss. So same record but very different meetings for these two teams. Deshaun Watson led the game with 135 passing yards and an interception. Nick Chubb ran for 92 yards to lead the game. And Amari Cooper led the game with 72 receiving yards. Seahawks vs. Chiefs was next. The Chiefs won 24-10, giving us our first home winner of the weekend. The Chiefs are now 12-3, and the Seahawks are 7-8. Patrick Mahomes had 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kenneth Walker had 107 rushing yards. And Travis Kelce led the game with 113 receiving yards. Next was Giants-Vikings. The Vikings won 27-24. They won on a last-second 61-yard field goal by Greg Joseph, the longest field goal in Vikings franchise history. That puts them at 12-3, and the Giants are 8-6-1. Daniel Jones had 334 passing yards and a touchdown. Saquon Barkley had 84 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Justin Jefferson had 133 receiving yards on 12 catches and a touchdown. Lions vs. Panthers is next. The Panthers won 37-23. Putting an end to the Lions' hot streak. The Lions are now 7-8, and the Panthers are 6-9. And similarly to the Saints, a very important 6-9 for the Panthers, keeping them in the divisional race with the Buccaneers. Jared Goff had 355 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. Deonta Foreman had 165 rushing yards and a touchdown. And DJ Chark led the game with 108 receiving yards. Falcons Ravens is next. The Ravens won 17-9. The Falcons are now 5-10, and the Ravens are 10-5. Desmond Ridder had 218 passing yards to lead the game. Gus Edwards led the game with 99 rushing yards. And Drake London led the game with 96 receiving yards. Next is Texans-Titans. The Texans won 19-14. Winning their second game of the year to put them at 2-12-1. While the Titans' struggles continue, and they are now 7-8. This loss also puts the Jaguars, as I mentioned earlier, in the lead for the AFC South. Davis Mills had 178 passing yards and a touchdown. Derrick Henry led the game with 126 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Philip Dorsett led the game with 45 receiving yards. Commanders 49ers is next. The 49ers won 37-20. I believe that's 8 in a row for the 49ers, bringing them to 11-4, while the Commanders are 7-1. Brock Purdy led the game with 234 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Ray McLeod led the game in rushing with just 1 attempt for 71 yards and a touchdown. And George Kittle led the game with 120 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Next up was the Eagles versus Cowboys. The Cowboys won 40-34. Very high scoring, very exciting game. This one. The Cowboys are now 11-4, and the Eagles are 13-2. Gardner Minshew, in the absence of Jalen Hurts, led the game in passing with 355 yards and 2 touchdowns. Miles Sanders led the game with 65 rushing yards, and CeeDee Lamb led the game with 120 receiving yards on 10 catches with 2 touchdowns. The last Christmas Eve game was Raiders-Steelers. The Steelers won 13-10 in the game honoring the late Steelers legend Franco Harris. Pretty cool to see them win that game for him. They moved to 7-8, while the Raiders fall to 6-9. Kenny Pickett threw for 244 yards and a touchdown. Najee Harris led the game with 53 rushing yards. And Pat Freiermuth led the game with 66 receiving yards. Moving on to the Christmas Day games, we started off with the Packers-Dolphins. The Packers won this game 26-20. Big win for the Packers to keep their playoff hopes alive. They're now 7-8, and the Dolphins are 8-7. Tua Tagovailoa led the game with 310 passing yards and a touchdown, although he did throw 3 interceptions. Now, he does, I think, have another concussion, or he is in concussion protocol, and he played the game through it. I've seen some stuff on Twitter showing the play in which it looked like he got hurt, and he was significantly worse after that play when people think he had a concussion. And that's when he threw the 3 interceptions. It'll be interesting to see if the Dolphins put him out on the field anymore this year. He's having some pretty serious concussion problems this year, and it might even affect the entirety of his career, sadly. Raheem Mostert led the game with 45 rushing yards. And Jalen Waddle led the game with 143 receiving yards and a touchdown. Broncos-Rams is next. The Rams won 51-14. I think the Rams were the worst scoring offense in the league before this game. And the Broncos might have even been the best scoring defense in the league, so very shocked to see the Rams put up 51 versus them. But yeah, this game was a complete blowout. The Broncos are now 4-11, and they just fired head coach Nathaniel Hackett after only 15 games, and I think that firing was well deserved. And the Rams moved to 5-10. Baker Mayfield had 230 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. Cam Akers had 118 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. And Jerry Jeudy led the game with 117 receiving yards Russell Wilson was also benched in this game for Brent Ripien. And then Ripien and the offensive lineman got into a little bit of a scuffle on the sidelines. So the Broncos as a whole are just a complete mess right now. Next is Bucks vs. Cardinals. The Bucks won 19-16 in overtime. Big win for the Bucks as they move to 7-8 and keep the lead atop the NFC South. While the Cardinals fall to 4-11. Tom Brady led the game with 281 passing yards and a touchdown. James Conner led the game with 79 rushing yards and a touchdown. And Greg Dortch led the game with 98 receiving yards on 10 catches. And last but not least, we have the Monday night game, which was Chargers-Colts. The Chargers won this game 20-3. They moved to 9-6 and clinched the playoffs as Justin Herbert is going to make his first playoff appearance in his career. And the Colts fall to 4-10-1. Herbert led the game with 235 passing yards and an interception. Austin Eckler led the game in rushing with 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Keenan Allen led the game with 104 receiving yards on 11 catches. So that is it for our Week 16 recap. I hope you enjoyed. We had a pretty good week of games this week. Our Week 17 predictions will come out either Wednesday or Thursday. But as always, before the Thursday night games, so stay tuned for those. Again, I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday season, and I'm looking forward to the new year. Thank you for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.